checking the connection. Awesome. Go, Sacha.
Okay. So, good morning from the sunny coast of Wales. As you will know, we have been flying around the country, stopping and landing with farmers on farms all around the country. But some of those farmers have offered to host the crew and myself. And on this one in particular, we have woken up to bird song and the most incredible view of the sea. And it's Matt's farm. Matt, thank you very much for hosting the team for a couple of days. It's been incredible. What is it that you do here? What's special about this place?
Special about the farm. So at Henbant, it's all about creating a whole ecosystem. So we're trying to farm as an entire ecosystem function. So we're permaculture based, which means kind of look into nature to see how we do things and kind of using that as a model. So it means for each part of the farm, we then look at how an ecosystem functions and bring that onto the farm. We're also I'd say the farm's big mission really is trying to prove that you can buy a small farm on a mortgage, that you can make it pay its way through producing real food, that you can do that whilst building biodiversity and building soil, that you can build social capital, and that you can enjoy it. And I kind of think if you can do that, and if I can do that, because I'm just kind of make it up as I go along, then I think anybody could do that, and therefore you can kind of make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will, you don't have a background in agriculture. You haven't come from a farming background, have you?
No, I come from being an ecologist, which is my strongest point as a farmer, is that I don't really know what I'm doing, but that I do have a really strong ecological base.
Okay. So I'll ask you about that on our walk between cows and chickens. But can you explain to us why we started up here, apart from the fact that the view is spectacular? What's the deal with cows here?
So the cows are a really important part of the system. So we wanted to look at, basically the farmer's job is to turn sunshine into food, isn't it? And into a thriving ecosystem. Yeah. And so our main...
Charlotte, you happy to walk and...
and so...
I'll warn you about
We'll help you with the fence. So farmer's job is, the most important job is to turn sunshine into food. And to do that, you've got to look at which of the world's ecosystems the most productive. So that savanna ecosystem, there's a big savanna ecosystem that covered the whole of most of Africa, most of North America, and that was like hundreds of thousands of bison and these kind of tree and kind of grass systems, and that's what we're trying to recreate here. But obviously we're not in those places, we're in Wales, and actually in Wales I would say the most productive system, part of an ecosystem we've got, is that kind of woodland edge. So with permaculture, which we use a lot on the farm, it's all about edges. So it's about creating as many of these little edges as possible. So instead of having big fields and just hedges around, we've broken the whole farm up.
Shall I take the... It's electric.
I'm good.
That's right. So we've broken the whole farm up into lots of tiny little paddocks that are surrounded by fruit trees. So it's creating this really richly productive system.
And there's lots of change going on as well, so nothing is kind of static by the sound of it.
No, nothing static. It's a developing system. So actually, if you look at an ecosystem, the most productive bit of an ecosystem is actually that change, is those bits where you put that bit of disturbance in, really. And that's why you can't just have a system that's just purely grass or that's just purely developing to trees, because things need that disturbance for them to become really exciting, productive ecosystems.
Yeah. And so the role of the cows here?
So the role of the cows is they are, so the kind of fastest growing, the most efficient way of capturing sunlight we've got is through grass. And so the cows kind of keep the grassland system cycling. And the way we do it, so we graze a third, we leave a third, we trample a third. And with that, we're building up a really rich biodiversity in the sward.
Which is the grass.
Which is the grass. So we're building up we've got hugely rich kind of herb-rich pastures, and the cows just kind of help that cycle move really. So they'll eat some, they'll poo some back, and they just help us really kind of keep that system.
Live demonstration.
Yeah. They just really keep that system alive.
Okay.
Jump over here.
In penguins in the Southern Ocean, is that right?
Yeah, it used to be.
How did you get from penguins in the Southern Ocean to deciding I want to be a farmer?
I think I always wanted to be a farmer. I think I grew up as a little boy and I was in love with nature, and I really wanted that whole self-sufficiency, dirty kind of fingers kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I grew up wanting to be a farmer, but if you come from a town, it's really hard to be a farmer.
Yeah,
And so I went off. So I went off and I became an ecologist, which felt accessible to me. And then I went and became a filmmaker, and I made programs like Planet Earth and Frozen Planet and stuff like this. And doing that, I got to spend, well, years of my life just sat into the world's most beautiful ecosystems.
Yeah.
And when I was doing that, I was sat there thinking, well, this is really nice, isn't it? But actually, this is what humans need to do. We need to copy in these ecosystems. So you can sit and look at some of the world's richest ecosystems.
Yeah.
And you look, and first of all, you see there's bits of it that are, no matter where you are, they're a bit broken. But also, actually, that they're incredibly productive without any inputs.
Yeah.
And that's when I found permaculture. And permaculture works entirely on that basis. It's all about having a system that's incredibly productive without external inputs. Just everything is made for use of.
And it's basically harnessing the power of nature, the natural systems.
Yeah,
That's
like
how it works.
if you've got nature on your side, you can't lose, can you really?
No.
Like, you know, she's got, 4 billion years, whatever it is, of proving that it works.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And was there any element of working on big programs like those BBC series that also made you, or gave you the desire to actually try and change the world?
I guess it gave me a feeling of, I don't know what you would call it really, that ability that actually I can do things and that the world is there.
It was empowering
It's
rather than
quite
disempowering.
empowering. No, it wasn't.
Wow.
It wasn't disempowering because I think actually, like we got to the end of Frozen Planet, and shall I say these things? We got to the end of Frozen Planet, and there was quite a political discussion with the Discovery Channel about actually, can we really have this skinny polar bear? Can we really tell this story? And at that point, I thought, well, this is really useful. You know, like this whole idea that people won't protect what they don't love. But actually, there's a more useful job, and for me, actually, I think being a farmer is the most important job in the world. I'm not saying you don't need a doctor and a dentist, but actually,
We need to eat.
we need to eat, and it's that thing that actually every day,
Yeah.
you know, we all get 3 votes a day in how our world looks and how our ecosystems function.
Okay.
And so that's incredibly powerful. Isn't
Those
it?
3 votes. You mean breakfast, lunch, and
Breakfast,
dinner?
lunch, and dinner. Yeah.
That's a really
Yeah.
interesting concept, and also how we eat will also reduce the number of doctors, etc., that we need.
But yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. So it's a completely holistic system, isn't it? So actually, if we can produce nutrient-dense food, I get really tired of the idea that people view food production as a necessarily
Evil.
ecologically negative thing to do. And actually, like the one thing that gives me the most hope for the future is that actually there are loads of humans, and actually humans are really creative, really capable things. And I think if we applied ourselves in the right way,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to prove here is that actually we can be a real force for good.
Yeah. As good as we can be destructive. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of forces for good, where are the chickens sitting?
So the chickens are an integral part of the system, because if you go back to, I talked about that kind of big kind of savanna grassland system,
Yeah.
then if you imagine what would follow those big herds of wildebeest would be birds. And so what they do is they come along and they scratch open all the surface, they allow new seeds in, it kind of builds up biodiversity, and they also kind of poo and scrape it all open, and they scrape open all those big cow pats.
Yeah.
And so it means that turnover in that soil life and all that stuff going on is much more enhanced.
Yeah.
Basically, it's much faster process.
And the chickens are also obviously providing eggs.
Yeah, so we've got, across the farm, we're producing at least almost a complete diet for 50 families, and we've got a slightly bigger base than that. But on this idea that actually proving that small farms can really feed people, like it seems a small amount, 300 chickens, but actually it's a real amount of eggs every day.
300 chickens?
This is 300 chickens.
Oh wow. And they're properly free range, which is lovely.
Well, they get moved every day, so every single day they go onto a fresh bit of grass, and so that it's like this moving with the herd thing. The whole thing's kept mobile.
Excellent.
Yeah. No, they do pretty well, these guys.
And you mentioned feeding 50 families. How does that work? It's through the veg.
So mainly through the Veg Box. That's our main route. So every week we do a Veg Box.
Taking the Veg Box, we'll head towards the veg tent.
Yeah, let's go down towards the market garden. We'll go actually through this gate over here, I think. Yeah, so every week we send out 50 veg boxes. But on top of that, now people get their meat, their eggs, and like a whole kind of regenerative diet, really. I'm really into regenerative over sustainability. I think if I ask you how your relationship is with, I've got no idea. But if I ask you how your relationship, and you said, oh, it's sustainable, to be honest, it's not really good, is it? So I think, whereas if you said, oh my word, like it just gets stronger every day, you know, like that's what I want from my farm. That's what I want from my relationship.
Our relationship with our planet.
Yeah, exactly. So if my relationship with my wife, my planet, my food gets stronger every day, like, I want a winner, aren't I?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Come through.
Okay, there's a steeper climb, Charlotte. We've got,
You can
are
do
there
it.
any obstacles down here that we can look out for?
Yeah, we're testing it today, Sacha.
Why did you pick this particular spot? I mean, it is a beautiful valley.
It's beautiful. Also, it's really varied. So actually, across the whole farm, we've got quite a lot of this pasture. We've got some really rich grassland systems, like over in the kind of that campsite where you've been staying.
Yeah.
That's some of the richest grassland you can find around here. We've got lots of big, like willow, wet, kind of like Welsh rainforest almost. And then we've got lots of ponds, and we've got actually one of my big projects this year is we've got a big old spruce plantation, which is just kind of like a bit like vertical toilet paper, really. Like it's not the most functional ecosystem.
It's definitely not a functional ecosystem.
And so
I'm not sure that I'd like my bottom on a spruce.
well, so it's not functioning either way, then, is it? But no, it's not terrible. But we're kind of doing a lot to kind of really enhance and bring that forwards to like a big. So across the whole farm, in the end, we'll have this big food forest, really, like big food forest across the whole farm system.
And for traditional farming, I say traditional farming, I mean, say that of a couple of decades ago.
Yeah.
High input style farming.
Mm-hmm.
A property like this would not have been particularly attractive.
No,
It would be hard to manage like that.
It would be hard to manage like that. I mean, go back again though. Go kind of pre-war. This would have been a perfectly functional size of farm. Right. And then obviously, like tracts have grown, expectations have grown. That concept that a farm, you know, should be able to be run by one person has changed, and that's a bit of a dead end, isn't it? So, yeah. So I think what we're trying to do really is kind of change this idea that small farms can really work on all these different dimensions. And one of our biggest things here actually is people.
Right.
So I would say it's not about just throwing loads of labour at it, it's about having really intelligently designed systems. If you think about nature, so nature's really complex, isn't it? And I could have this as a whole big wheat field. I mean, I couldn't because it's West Wales, it's really bumpy. And I could manage that one person, but it'd be really boring ecologically and food production wise and all these things. Whereas actually what we've got here, because we can put more people in, we can then say actually we're able to deal with quite complex systems. Yeah, but it does involve people. And pigs. We've got a team of pigs actually. This one's just been taken out because he started jumping on his sisters. But all his sisters are down in the woodland. I talked about that spruce woodland. Yeah. They're busy disturbing that and bringing that kind of ecologically, kind of really kind of pushing the kind of foot down on the ecology of that woodland.
So the plan for that woodland is not to remove this spruce?
Well, a lot of the spruce blew over, so it's kind of in a recovery process. But in that recovery process, instead of just allowing it to come back to what it was, we can really now, using pigs, putting a lot of trees in, like a lot of edible things in, and design, like permaculture, we can really kind of turn that into a whole ecosystem that's really well designed for humans. And that's what I think really all these farms are working towards is like human enhanced ecosystem.
Excellent. So we are now down in the market garden. Should we go into the polytunnel, into the garden?
Yeah, it's quite warm in here. Let's go into the market garden.
It is very warm in there, but it does look incredibly productive.
No, it's working really well.
Excellent.
Working really well.
Okay, and so people here also on the farm is really important. There are a lot of different people coming and going. Us turning up as a load of strangers was not an uncommon thing for you here.
No, it's completely part of the system. I mean, a big part of our thing here is to try and get more people to do what we're doing, and so that involves some kind of teaching and some kind of sharing of what we're doing. But also, like I said right at the start, like a big part of the farm's kind of context is to kind of bring people on board. It's like if you can't just produce food. I think you've got to bring that kind of local community and that kind of whole social side with you as well. So yeah, we've got a volunteer day, and there's always a huge flow.
And that's another way that you can have an impact, right? By having people coming here, learning what to do, but actually learning to the extent that they can apply it not in a farm that has to be exactly like this. It's the principles they learn that they could then apply to. I think I spoke to somebody who's taking it back to southern France, for example.
Yeah, no, it's completely about that kind of passing on those, because every farm's different. You know, like I'm not saying any farm should be like this one, but actually there's lots of concepts and things in here that I'd like to kind of take forward, really. And so this is the market garden, and actually one of those big things that, like, if you look at like the way food's damaging, really one of the biggest ways to do cultivation. So we lose loads of carbon every time we turn soil over, we kill all the soil life every time we turn it over. And so actually this is a way of producing vegetables with no digging at all. So all this garden's doing is producing food, locking down carbon and building really healthy soil.
You can do all those at the same time.
Yeah, it's all about doing these things at the same time.
So, and I've spoken to a lot of farmers that are kind of fed up. They're sort of sometimes, I suppose, cynical around climate change, but not actually about the stats. They're rejecting the concept that farming is bad. And that farmers have done bad things for so long, where they feel that they've been managing a piece of land for a long time and doing their best to provide people with food. It's that concept of like that we've been doing the wrong thing that's hard.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
I'd say that I think it's no harder to farm well than it is to farm bad. And I think it's all about, so in Wales, we're in Wales, we're mainly a livestock, grass producing country. We're really good at it. Like actually, Welsh farmers are amazing at producing grass and livestock, okay? Yeah. And this is what drives me mad, is they're so close to doing an amazing job, but so much of it is about the why they're doing it as well as the how they're doing it. So Welsh farmers, they've got how, okay? Yeah. But they've not quite got the why. So if you look at these systems and go, actually, if you just tweak your system a little bit, you can lock down carbon, you can build biodiversity. So you're not even like I was saying about food, it doesn't have to be ecologically negative. Like, believe that and see. I think if everyone just stood up and took a big breath, these farmers, and said, actually, do you know what, my farm can be amazing for all these things. It's so close for them to do it, you know?
Just need a small tweak. So are you optimistic that we can turn around farming systems in the sort of timescales we're talking about for biodiversity and climate, sort of the next 10 years, by 2030?
I don't think we've got a choice.
Right.
It's doable. It's completely doable. Like I've now, we've been doing this for 8 years. When we came, I was a little bit sceptical. I was set off on this mission. This is what we're going to do. Yeah. And then I got a few years in, and I was like, is this really possible, or is it just some like made-up story? There are very few farms that are really practicing. But actually, then I went on this big journey around Europe and around different farms around the world, really, and I found, not many, but I found like a handful of really effective, productive farms that are really ticking all those things that I talked about in that context. What I don't understand is why their neighbours aren't doing it, but when you go to those farms themselves, they're really thriving. Yeah. They're enjoying it, they're producing food, they're making money, they're building, all these things. And so then when you go to their neighbour, are they not doing it? That's what I'm trying to work out. And I think it's about that, why would they do that? I think it's understanding that problem and that there's an alternative.
Yeah, and accepting the change. I think that's interesting. You also mentioned touring all around Europe. At that point, can you introduce me to Stefan?
Yeah, Stefan.
Can you walk over and join us? Are you up for another walk, Charlie?
Yeah, so, Stefan can introduce himself really, but Stefan came to us last winter, and then this year he's been, managing the market garden and a lot of the farm as well, actually. Doing a really good job.
Hi. So what is the principle of the vegetable growing in a permaculture system? Well, it looks pretty incredible from here.
I'd say it depends on your context, but what we do is we use a no-dig approach to gardening. So we
no dig, is that?
Yeah, no dig. So we grow vegetables based on how nature would grow things, from the top down, building situation like in a forest ecosystem. And that's what we do. We use use compost, we make our own. We get a little bit of municipal compost in.
Yep.
And yeah, we build layers on top of each other.
And quite a few of the beds have got multiple things growing in them.
That's right.
That's and are there particular pairings of plants, are they?
Yeah, they're companion plantings. Well, there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is protection, right? The other one is they're helping each other. Another approach is that they just fill in different niches. We can grow them together, so might as well do it.
Get more out of the same space.
Yeah, it's like an intensifying of the beds. There's also like the beneficial effects that they have on each other. So there are multiple reasons to do that.
From your experience here, can this be as productive as intense high input farming?
It is more productive. So this whole area is less than half an acre.
Yes.
And we do 65 shares a week for 25 weeks, and we could probably do 120 on it. Like you see, lots of the beds are just empty.
Yes.
And lots of stuff we don't need. When you see our compost pile, you see lots of stuff because we just grow too much things.
Can we keep walking, Charlotte, or is this too much to the hazard? Okay.
We just grow lots of things. This is the second year of this tab, the first year on the management, I would say. So we was building lots of it last year, and then this year we continue to do it. We had the crop down for it and really got it going. And we found that we can grow a lot more food than we thought on this half an acre.
Wow. And this is a strip of wildflowers and fruit tree.
Yeah, so every 10 beds we have a perennial row. We call them perennial rows because all these plants are perennial, so most of them at least. So the idea here is that there's, well, again, multiple functions, right? One or another of the permaculture principles. So the whole garden is based around soil microbiology. So we kind of take a step back. We don't know how these things work 100%. We're just learning, right? As a species, so to speak. It's the frontier knowledge about these things is the soil food web.
Yep.
Taught by Dr. Ingham. So we are microbe farmers. We're providing an ecosystem for the microbiology to thrive, and then they look after our plants, really.
And is that concept of the microbiology of the soil and working with that to enhance our vegetable growing, is that something that's commonly taught in agricultural colleges?
No, you don't even hear about it.
No.
Yeah, the only time you hear about microbiology is in forms of pests and disease.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a space for that, but I don't quote me on the numbers, but I think there's 150 times more beneficial microbes than there are negative. So this is kind of how we thrive. And then again, we're using agroecological principles. So we have some slugs in the garden. I just saw clubroot in one bed, but I'm not worried about it because it's all part of an ecosystem, right? In order to have a functioning ecosystem, you have to have all parts of the ecosystem. If you now go in and you kind of treat against that with chemicals,
then you have to treat the next thing.
Then you leave the niche open, right?
Right.
So it's all about filling these niches and create an ecosystem that will eventually thrive. Does it mean that we have 100% crop that we can take out? No. Like the change of mindset is really going from maximum to optimum. Yeah. Maybe we only harvest 90% of our cabbages, but they're spot on and they're chemical free. And then the other 10 we can keep big, so we can make compost from it. So just cycling in the farm.
And what was your journey was a bit different, isn't it? You also haven't got an agricultural background necessarily.
Yeah, so I went into farming quite late. I was 23 when I went into farming. So I really come from a city in Germany, and the only time I was in nature, so to speak, was when I was in the military, doing training in the forest. This was the first time I've been in the forest. Yeah. And
can you walk down this way slightly, Charlotte?
Yeah.
Sorry, just
no. Like I was then after the military, I used to run a bistro, really, a little cafe restaurant. Yeah. After a couple of years, I got
intro to food as well.
Exactly, right. This is how I got in touch with food for the first time. And I really, after a couple of years, I learned that there's something missing, and I couldn't really put my finger on it, but there was something lacking just in me as a human being, and I decided I want to find out what that is, and I started traveling. Yeah. And then eventually I ended up in Australia, and in Australia it's very common to do farm work. Yeah. To kind of extend your visa, right? And that's what I did, and I really loved it. This is how I got into farming, and I decided I want to be a farmer. Back in Australia.
But that was in outback Australia, so rural northern Queensland, right?
No, this was in rural southern Australia.
Southern Australia,
Big dairy operation, 1,200 cows, like a massive operation.
Okay, quite different to here.
Very different to this, but I didn't know anything about it back then. I couldn't see what's going on. But what I did see is that it's very input based. Animal welfare couldn't be that good with all these animals, right? Even though these cows are herd animals, they're active in large groups, but the way they were managed there was just something wrong, and I couldn't really put my finger on it because I wasn't an ecologist, I wasn't a biologist, I wasn't a vet. Like, I didn't know, but there was something not right.
Yeah.
And then I started reading, and I understood about agroecology, really, about this is when everything changed for me.
Okay.
And this is then when I went up to North Queensland and Australia, and I became an orchardist by training. I started to work on different farms, started to manage them. I studied agribusiness management because I knew that I could learn how to run a farm in conventional training, but I did not know. I knew that I cannot learn how to grow things because everything that you can learn really, and just now it's starting to change a little bit. Like organic agriculture is promoted in this kind of stuff, but the agroecological approach to farming is really much not taught a lot.
So you learn how to run a farm business, but the training in it happens in places like
That's it.
in places like this.
So I really like to get up very early in the morning.
Okay.
So I get up at 4:30 and I start to read.
Right.
This is like my time. I have a small child and a wife, so this is my 2 hours in the morning where I study. I do this every day.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this since 2013.
Okay.
So this is where the theoretical part comes from. This is my independent research, I call it, right?
Yeah.
I'm just reading everything I can get my hands on, and then I go to places like Henbant where you then can, like bring the practical side and the theoretical side together.
And test the principles of
That's
what's
it.
going on.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few people from different backgrounds, different countries here who are all here to learn.
That's
Is
it.
that right? Okay, and obviously you're one of those, but now you are heading off from here to go and run a farm. Is that in Estonia?
Yeah, so when I came here, I didn't come here to farm or intern. I came here to write a business plan. And I know Matt from regenerative agriculture research groups on the internet, where Matt and I both intact. And we started talking, and he said, come to my place and help me cut some firewood in winter. And
write your business plan here.
And write the business plan here. So my wife and I decided that's a good plan. That's a good idea. We came here, and then while we were here, pretty much very soon after we arrived, Matt asked if I wanted to stay and help him run the farm. So that's what I did. One of my hobbies, not how you say that. One of my one of my passions is to teach regenerative agriculture. Because while I was writing this business plan, I was doing a lot of networking.
Yeah.
Like I use LinkedIn and other platforms just to network with people because I don't have any money.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of knowledge, but I have no capital, right, to start a farm. So I was going out to find money and land. So I was just writing people on LinkedIn, networking with lots of very influential people.
Yep.
And I just offered them to have a chat and talk about farming, the potential that is in regenerative agriculture when it comes to topics like ecological collapse and things like this, right? To carbon sequestration, all these topics. And I found that 99% of the people were really interested in it. And everyone I talked to, I don't have any negative feelings, but everyone was really curious about this whole topic. And
particularly as you're offering ecological recovery, but also productive farming, it's a win-win.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it's the only way it can go forward. Like how else can it work? I know there's a lot of, from the technological space, there's a lot of technology that wants to fix a lot of things, and I believe there's a place for that.
Yeah.
But going back to the roots, it must be the only way. Everyone is talking about climate change, and now we have this big carbon sequestration technology coming up, hopefully, right? Everyone's waiting for that.
Yes.
But all this doesn't do anything if the ecosystem collapses.
Indeed. Yeah.
It
Those
doesn't-
two
it
are
doesn't help us.
intrinsically connected, aren't they?
Yeah, if the water cycles break down, it's like,
Yeah.
what do we do then? Then,
And for anyone
more
who's
complex than that.
been heard of permaculture, from the past couple of decades, but has still not seen it kind of explode in popularity and really be able to have an impact on kind of bigger food systems, what do you feel about that now? How do you feel about the potential for permaculture principles to grow bigger, and what evidence have you?
Well, I don't know if I'm an expert on permaculture, but what I've learned is agroecology, and permaculture really is applied ecology plus other things, right? But it must be the way that we need a paradigm shift, right? We need to start looking at how does nature work, because now we have the knowledge, but it's scattered all over the place, fragmented information everywhere. Now we need to bring it all together and say, okay, this is how the patterns and dynamics of nature function. How can we now use this to drive our food production, kind of ride the wave on that, right? And I'm very hopeful for that, because I met so many people who are, first of all, very interested in it, and also I met a lot of people who are already doing it.
And a lot of people also, by the sounds of it, who are interested in paying you for your time and expertise for doing it now.
Not only that, like when I was telling you, I was speaking with all these very influential people to ask for money, really, to present them a business plan, and we were talking about possibilities, how can we make this happen. And a lot of people said, look, I have land, my land.
Wow.
And I found.
And
that,
do you think this has changed in the last few years?
Oh,
Is there a change?
oh, there's a big focus on regenerative agriculture right now. And I don't really know where that comes from. I feel like a little bit it's my baby because I've been doing this for 9 years and I've been doing this, I was calling it
let it
alternative
go.
farming, all these
Yeah.
different things, right? And all of a sudden now everyone's talking about it and I'm a little bit like, whoa, what's going on? But no, I feel this really has changed a lot lately.
And that's in this country, but also, well, certainly across Europe, but potentially around the world also?
Definitely around the world. Australia's huge in that. Everywhere, really. South America's big in agricultural techniques, really.
So as a kind of final, how optimistic are you? There's a lot of young people who have a bit of climate anxiety, I suppose, around this feeling that there's changes are happening really fast. We've had massive floods in Germany just now. The big fires that have been in California, up in the Arctic. There's lots of stuff that is quite big.
Yeah.
There's a feeling for many that we can't change fast enough. What do you feel about that? Are you optimistic?
I would say to these people who are anxious about climate change, I would say take a deep breath and start focusing on what you can do. Like there's no point in focusing on something that you have no influence in. But there are a million things that you can actually do. You can, for example, if you don't want to farm, you can get your food from an agricultural farm. That's one really big thing, right? You can start change your behavior. There are a million things that you can actually have an impact in. Maybe they're small, but overall, in the bigger picture, they will change everything.
And also help to drive the systems, but and also at a bigger picture, if you're saying there's suddenly bigger growing interest from larger agricultural systems in regenerative farming, then the system is also changing. So you doing your little bit will also help change the bigger food system.
That's the only way. I believe in a bottom-up kind of change. We need to have top-down kind of information, but there needs to be a bottom-up kind of movement, right?
Yeah.
I'm absolutely hopeful, and I'm not only hopeful, I know it's happening because I'm involved in it for 9 years now. Like I'm not worried about climate change because I believe we will deal with it.
You can see the change you can do with your own hands.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's been really interesting. It is Henbant Farm, right?
Henbant Permaculture, yeah.
Henbant Permaculture, yeah. So if anybody is particularly interested in permaculture, Henbant Farm is a place to come to learn all kinds of things. I'm sure Matt seems the most approachable person ever. And there's plenty of opportunities to volunteer and come and learn and even camp here. But yeah, I hope that anyone who's watching this is also feeling optimistic about not only the ability for regenerative agriculture to work, to be productive, to really help feed people, but also that at the bigger picture level, the systems are changing as well. And all those small things we do with Countess actually do have an impact. Thank you. Sorry, Charlotte.